I went to high school in Maplewood, New Jersey at Columbia High School. So that's where the sport was invented.
These days, whether it's school, work, or some other objectively taxing task, we all have an incredibly busy schedule. And because of that, it can be hard to know how to structure your fitness training program. One YouTuber that I'm extremely impressed with, not only from a content perspective, but also from a balancing of life type of perspective, is Marques Brownlee, aka Mkbhd. This guy's not only one of the top tech YouTubers in the world, but he's also a business owner and a professional athlete in the sport of ultimate frisbee. His tasks seem to be both mentally and physically taxing, and this got me thinking, how would I train someone with such a crazy schedule? And then I thought, well, his schedule, with the exception of being a professional athlete, may look quite similar to a lot of our own. I know a lot of you are in school and play sports as well. So as a strength coach and personal trainer, here's how I would train someone who's wanting to get better at their sport with a busy schedule. Or it could just be someone who's looking to optimize their strength and explosiveness. Whichever the case, you'll probably find something valuable related to training that you can take away. So let's jump into it. The first step in creating a proper training routine is evaluating where you've been, where you are, and where you plan on going. In Marques's situation, he's an athlete. He's in great shape already, so something like weight loss or toning probably wouldn't be part of his training plan. However, he may want to optimize training for his sport during the season and stay well-rounded in terms of health during the off-season. Now, I don't know his complete practice schedule, as that varies from sport to sport, team to team, and even season to season. But given that, there's two primary aspects to training in this scenario. The first is we need to train sport-specific. The second is we need to train around a busy schedule. These can be two completely different styles of training, but we'll look at how that would work if you combine them for efficiency, since most of us can't really dedicate our full lives to training like, say, an NBA player, for instance. Mkbhd competes in ultimate frisbee, which can be classified as a strength power sport. More examples of sports in this realm may be soccer, football, basketball, and tennis, among others. These sports are not solely endurance sports like cross-country running, yet they have an endurance component. They're also not totally strength sports like powerlifting, although they have strength components. So then how would we train for a sport like this? The simple answer is by utilizing the basic training principles. So there are several training principles, including individualization, SRA, and reversibility, among others. However, for the purposes of this video, we're going to stick with the three primary principles of overload, variation, and specificity. While we'll be utilizing it in terms of training for a strength power sport like ultimate frisbee, these principles should be the foundation of any scientific routine. Here's a brief overview. First off, we have overload. Overload simply states that your training should be progressive, typically in terms of volume and intensity. Then we have variation, which refers to changing up the program at the optimal times. And finally, we have specificity, which is training for a specific outcome, which in this instance is getting better at our sport while being busy. So let's assume with Marques's busy schedule that he has time for maybe 4 hours of training per week. Obviously, this could be much less or even perhaps a bit more. Some professional athletes train 4 hours a day, including practice, but that's often in cases where it's their entire life, like a NFL football player, for instance. In this scenario, Marques needs a lot more time for running his businesses and his YouTube channel on top of training. And for most of us, we can relate. If you go to school, you're probably mentally exhausted by the end of the day and don't really have the capacity for a 2-hour session. And that's the same if you have a job where you're working 8+ hours a day. So with these 4 hours, probably the most efficient way to break that up would be through a 4-day split. My favorite 4-day split for athletes is a push-pull, push-pull. And typically we do this on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And like I said earlier, this will vary given the time of season, but for simplicity's sake, we'll be looking at what training might look like pre-season to fully prep for your sport. And this is a plan that you could also do during season if you wanted to, but it would be optimized for the season. So let's start with the push days. Typically, you want to pick somewhere around 4 to 9 exercises. Let's go somewhere in the middle and pick somewhere around 6, and we won't really have to worry too much about fatigue management since this is more for the preseason. For a push day with a strength power athlete, I'd have them focus on their strength as well as their power development. Here, we'll start by focusing on the compound movements. For instance, the first movement in the routine will be high bar squats. If squats are in the routine, we'll usually do them towards the beginning. This is a foundational movement that most people should be doing some variation of it in general. Then we'll go to the push press. This is more of a power movement rather than purely strength. It will help with the explosiveness, jumping ability, and sprinting. Next, we'll add split squats and dumbbell bench press to work each side of the body individually. Finally, we'll top it off with some core work of medicine ball slams and oblique medicine ball throws. Now, this routine is something that could be mimicked or manipulated a bit on the second push day of the week. Now, you could either do this exact same workout on the second push day of the week, or you could change it up a bit. Either way could work perfectly fine. Moving on to the second day of training, we'll focus on the pulling muscle groups. Side note, all muscles technically pull, but this term refers more towards the trajectory of the resistance as you bring it in closer to you instead of pushing it further out. With this particular training day, it is important to continue our strength and power training by focusing more on the posterior chain. Our first movement will be the mid-thigh pull, or pulls from the hip. This is another explosive exercise that will aid in jumping and sprinting abilities for your sport. Then we'll add RDLs, or Romanian deadlifts, dumbbell rows, glute ham raises, single arm cable or band reverse flies, and as you can imagine, this exercise would be particularly beneficial for working similar muscles to throwing a frisbee. And we'll finish with box jumps. And just like the push day, the pull day can repeat on the second session each week, or you can utilize another mix of exercises. Before we move on to the sets, reps, and balancing this with your daily routine, if you've made it this far in the video, you're obviously interested in what I have to say to some degree. So go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next video. This style of training is probably best suited for preseason and the beginning of the actual season. It is what is known as specific training. In the off season, we do more reps, more volume, and perhaps a bit more hypertrophy work. That type of training is known as general training. With the routine we've reviewed, we're more interested in optimizing our bodies for sport performance in an efficient way. We're also more focused on power and peaking. Therefore, instead of a lot of volume, we're going to lower the reps on most of the major exercises. So for all of the major movements like squats, push press, bench, mid-thigh pulls, and RDLs, we're going to primarily stay in the 4 sets of 5 reps range, and perhaps even 3 reps for the power movements. This is focusing on strength and power while reducing volume. For the other lifts that are less taxing, we'll perform the standard 3 sets of 10 reps. This sort of training is sport-specific to a strength power sport and would probably last about a mesocycle or 2. So that's the specificity side of our training principles. To fulfill the principle of variation, we'd want to change it up in terms of exercises or sets and reps at the end of each of the mesocycles. And keep in mind, to cover the overload principle, we'd want to start the mesos off a little bit lighter, say maybe somewhere around a 7 out of 10 intensity, and work our way up to 9 or 10 out of 10 intensity by the final week. That's known as peak week. Side note, at this level of training, you'd want to implement a deload week in between cycles. So overall, this program should work perfectly for someone that has a busy schedule like Marquez. Having said this program only covers the resistance training aspect of the sport. Someone like Marquez, especially on the professional level, would need time for practice, plyometrics, and cardio training as well. This program is merely the basics of resistance training for the preseason and perhaps the season itself. Yet it is outside of the practice of the actual sport, perhaps the most important aspect of getting better at your sport and for gaining strength and power. If you're a person who's an athlete or works out on top of school or work and you have limited time to train, this program could help you tremendously. It is designed to help you gain muscular strength and power to optimize speed, strength, and explosiveness. So make sure to follow Mkbhd for awesome tech videos and give this program a shot. Let me know how it goes for you in the comments below, and thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.